Hello and welcome to the Cyber Weekly. This week we have an interesting guest called Bryan, and we'll be talking to Bryan. But before we talk to Bryan, be sure to subscribe to the show. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, so be sure to subscribe and let us know what is good and what is bad and things we can change in the show. Other than that, welcome, Bryan.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Yes, it's very interesting. Bryan is also situated in Africa, specifically with South Africa. So, how is the weather that side?
Weather today was nice and sunny. I'll stay near Durban on the east coast in KZN. So lovely weather. Stay near the beach. That's awesome.
Wow, that's the dream life, I guess. So, who is Bryan?
All right. So I've got a bit of information to share on who's Bryan. So I'm a proud father of two daughters. One is based in Cape Town and the other one is in New York. And I'll fly out on Thursday actually to go and visit my daughter in New York for about 10 days. I'm a strong believer in leading a balanced lifestyle. I like to spend a lot of time outdoors and take advantage of KZN. So I'm an active kite surfer, biker, and social scuba diver. Also live with my three dogs, Pico, Kelly, and Luna. I have a number of cybersecurity certifications, and I continue to study as I need to keep up my CPD points. I hold a CISM, a CompTIA Security Plus, and a certified in cybersecurity. I'm also a professional member of the IRTPSA. Now, the IRTPSA is the Institute of Information Technology Professionals. It's a professional body that encourages professionalism in the industry and engages with stakeholders. I relaunched the KZN chapter for the IRTPSA in 2017, and then the special interest group in cybersecurity in 2021. And I still serve on both committees. And I mention these specifically and this industry body because the special interest group in cybersecurity promotes an understanding of cybersecurity and the nature of threats that we're facing, and we provide thought leadership. We have about a few webinars every year. There's one tomorrow on the basics of third-party risk. So volunteering for the IRTPSA is my way of giving back to the community. I like to encourage people to join IT as a profession, and specifically cybersecurity, because we know there's a huge demand for cybersecurity jobs. And in my country, there's a huge demand for people to have jobs. There's a high unemployment rate. And my mission at work, or in general, is to help customers mitigate cybersecurity risk by applying a holistic approach using industry best practices and frameworks. So just a little bit about myself. I've been in information technology for about 30 years. I've served in many roles, from site engineer, information services manager, group infrastructure manager. I moved along into sales, business development, strategic account manager. I was head of sales for Wolfpack, and I'm now head of department for Securelytics for BC Technologies. I regularly educate companies on cybersecurity risks and how to take action, and also do this by presenting, for example, today, and providing content to the media. I've been fortunate to be involved in many projects across the time and delivered infrastructure services over my working career to about 7,000 users in several countries. Many of those are in Africa, from South Africa all the way to Swaziland, Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Tanzania, and interestingly, did work in Syria before the war. And that included a track record of about 140 projects to implement information technology and related services. Just some examples of recent cybersecurity engagements that I've been involved in. We've done risk assessments for customers, penetration tests, CISO consulting, remediation assistance, secure code reviews, ISO 27001 assistance, help with data privacy, third-party risk assessments, awareness training, cybercrime training. We've also did work for the cybersecurity framework for government, as well as security operations. That's it.
That's a mouthful.
Sorry about that.
Because I was going to ask you now, what does your job represent as head of department at Securelytics?
It'll be a short answer.
Yeah, go on.
Okay. So head of department Securelytics, it's a brand new department in BC Technologies. It was only officially launched in March of this year. So my job is to lead the team, grow sales, deliver to existing customers, find new customers, and develop and mature cybersecurity services. We've got a security operations team and a network of consulting resources and partners. We can also do governance, risk, and compliance work. And our goal really, it's all aligns very closely to my personal goals, is to create value and reduce risk. And very importantly, we want to make a difference to our customers by helping improve their cybersecurity posture. So our services are a mix of consulting and specialized platforms and products. An example could be Sanomi and Black Kite. There's some services very quickly that we offer. There's virtual CISO services, managed detection and response, advanced endpoint protection, penetration testing, risk assessments. Very key is to protect backups from being interfered with when a ransomware attack happens, third-party risk management, digital forensics and incident response, and then also 27001 certification assistance.
Yeah, interestingly, not too long ago, you talked about third-party risks. There's a blog post you put out there for third-party risks. How deep does it usually touch you about third-party risk?
Sorry, just repeat the question.
Of recently, you talked of third-party risks. You actually put out a post. So I'm wondering, how does it impact you? Like, why do you find it as something key for an organization to take seriously?
Okay. So if you think about it, if you think about most organizations, they've got cybersecurity defenses, and everybody knows that they need the basics. So you might have firewalls for perimeter security. You might have identity and access control. You could have antivirus on your desktops. You could have end user awareness training, EDR, all sorts of things that we call various, that all defense in depth. So think of your organization as like a big fortress, and you basically secured it against outside threats. The third-party suppliers are allowed to come into your organization and have access to all sorts of services within your organization. So they can have access to your people, your process, your systems, your data. So the question is what kind of risks are these third-party suppliers bringing into your organization? How seriously do they take risk? And how are you controlling what they access to? And it's very important to think about what kind of assurance can they give you that you are protected from them and their staff from third-party supplier risk. And there's great platforms that you can use. For example, you can scan them using a platform like Black Kite. And there's a fantastic report you can get called a ransomware susceptibility index that will scan external facing internet assets using open source scanning. And you can just see how seriously these companies take security. You can also discuss with them, help them remediate the issues, and you can also monitor them on an ongoing basis. And if you look at third-party supplier risk, it's in almost your top 4 or 5 issues most times when you look at all these threat reports. How did people get in there? A good example is if you Google a fish tank. It's a funny example. So a fish tank was installed in a casino in America, and they plugged the fish tank in. It had some IT connectivity and devices, but they didn't think about security. But the people were able to hack into that casino via that fish tank, via its unprotected connection into the internet, because it wasn't secured. There's just an example. Another good example is the Stuxnet attack. I'm not going to go into Stuxnet in detail, but that was introduced by third-party suppliers, having access to control systems and putting in a USB device.
Yeah, yes, definitely. There's a lot of issues concerning third-party risks. Also a good classic one would be the SolarWinds one.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Yep. So Colonial pipeline attack.
Yeah. So, in 2020, that is when you began your certification journey from Security Plus to CISM, which is in 2023. How was your journey, Bill?
So to be quite honest, it was very tough. Because starting to study again wasn't easy. I've had a bit of a gap between studying, and I had to really knuckle down and become quite disciplined. I'd set some goals. A key goal was to get the CISM certification, but I decided that I would study as much as possible and prepare for that. So along the route, I said, okay, let me get the Security Plus from CompTIA. I also then did the certified in cybersecurity for IRC squared. And then I read as much as I could get my hands on. I did a lot of networking on LinkedIn and basically immersed myself in cybersecurity. I set aside study time in the mornings. I tried to do 2 hours every day. I also connected with many local and international leaders in cybersecurity. And I actually find LinkedIn is very useful to get information. I did a number of courses on Udemy. I looked at things like ethical hacking, ISO 27001, CISSP boot camps, web security, PCI DSS. Then I also looked at the official soccer material. Obviously, the manual is great, but then they've also got the questions and answer database, which I use for my final preparation for the exam. And then also being exposed to people in cybersecurity was invaluable to see the practical aspect of how it works. And I met many highly skilled individuals, professionals, and managed to work with them in terms of delivering services, and then also attending industry events.
Yeah, definitely. We can't negate the fact that all of these things usually happen because of the people we know, and they strongly impact the way we look at cybersecurity as a whole. And specifically, 2020, why did you start then?
Okay,
Uh,
so 2020, yeah. So things that changed. My background, if you think about where I started, as a site engineer, worked my way up and to site manager, infrastructure manager, and then I ended up in sales. So initially, my focus and background and speciality was everything around IT infrastructure. So I was managing large outsourced services for large accounts and managing the sales process and everything around delivering those outsources. And then various things changed within my customer base. And then I was faced basically going to look for brand new customers, and the market had also changed. And in my mind, a lot of the services that I have been offering had become commoditized. So I was faced with quite a difficult decision: is how do I make myself relevant? And I did a lot of thinking, and there were three areas that really interested me. One was cybersecurity, one was data, and one was cloud. So I thought, okay, a good friend was in cybersecurity in my company at the time, and I was very interested in what he was doing, and he encouraged me. So he said I should start to get into that, and then I started studying that. And since then, I've just been studying and learning as much as I can nonstop.
Interesting. You hinted on you being in sales first. How has that background actually helped impact your cybersecurity, especially when it comes to communication of risks and all that?
So sales definitely does help. So sales to me, the way I like to sell is about engaging with customers and then listening to them. So it's really around like a consulting led engagement, trying to understand what their challenges are. And also, a lot of customers don't have a very high level of understanding. So I spend a lot of time trying to educate them on the threats and how these can affect their business. Um, and it's also very important for me to try and understand who the target audience is and the level of maturity. Um, so I try and take them on a level of understanding, and every customer is also at a different level of maturity in terms of whoever I'm engaging with. So if I'm engaging with an IT person, they've got a high level of understanding. If I'm engaging with a business owner or a financial manager, they have a very low level of understanding. So it's also very important to tailor your message um, to the audience and make sure that you getting the message across in terms of their level of understanding. Um, Cybersecurity is also a grudge purchase, and it's not something people get excited about spending money on. So I try to make it real, focus on real world practical examples of what I call high impact scenarios. So examples are ransomware, data breaches, business email compromise, and third party risks, as we've discussed. I also try and speak in language that they can understand. And I think the problem we have in our industry, in IT and cybersecurity, is that there's a lot of jargon, three-letter acronyms, and people really, they may nod and say they understand, but they don't really understand. So I try and translate it into simple to understand language. And then the other challenge we have is what I call the perception gap. The perception gap is where customers think they are and think that they've got a lot of defenses and that they're very well protected versus what they actually have. And in a lot of cases, their environment is nowhere near as secure as they think. And that's also why, you know, trying to educate them about best of breed frameworks, best practice, is important to make sure that there's no blind spots.
Yeah, definitely. Especially the fact that I like the way you've talked about tailoring the information basing on what the customer needs and also bringing out the information in the way they understand it best. Because I always find that some people always try to lean, especially people who are from a technical background, they will try to lean more into their technical information and they lose the person along the way. And I
That's true.
think, yeah, it's always very important to lead the conversation and also make the lingos easy for someone to actually understand what is going on. So, definitely, you've also talked about also something to do with risk. I always find that it's usually very hard to quantify risks and tell someone, okay, run somewhere. How the person will tell you, how often does that happen to my organization, or I've never been attacked before. How do you usually approach such situations?
Okay. So a lot of it, as we said, is about education. But if you think and unpack the risk process, so each organization will have a different risk profile depending on what type of business they're in. So, for example, there could be very specific risks facing them that we know obviously about the top four that we discussed: ransomware, data breach, etc. Um, but in every environment, there's also specific vulnerabilities that they have. And those vulnerabilities will be based on the specific technologies that they've deployed. So basically, the risks are as a consequence of the threats facing them, added to those vulnerabilities based specifically on their environment. And that's all then based on the nature of their business and their risk appetite. So the first thing that is really important is to do a risk assessment and look at their current posture to determine what their posture is. So that would look at their business, what their crown jewels, which are their most important assets. And we speak about crown jewels, and these are the things that, if compromised in an attack, will most adversely affect their business. Also, their level of dependence on RT and their risk tolerance or risk appetite is important. So if you can then come up with some risks, you can then prioritize them on a heat map by severity. So the risks with the highest impact and likelihood should be addressed first. And then also what we do for customers is develop a roadmap over time to address risks based on that priority and available budget. And then also whatever you do and however you treat that risk, it should always be appropriate to the level of risk and the potential business impact and loss. And then the objective is to reduce the company's inherent risk to an acceptable level of residual risk over time.
Yeah. Now maturity level. We've talked about it. Every organization have a different maturity level. So how do you manage those different levels of maturity? Because you'll find an organization who still have IT tied into cyber security, and there's always that conflict of interest, and you're not sure exactly where the information should lie, or some which actually have a cybersecurity program, but you find that some of the systems they are putting in place, or the level of information, or the way they are broken down the team, it's not so much productive. So how do you usually, bring the organization on board and also lead them to like a direction which is more productive for them?
So let's just say, for example, you've got a small business very basic business. So they don't need to have a high level of maturity. They just got some very basic systems. They don't have a lot of personal identifiable data. So you can just sit down with them and then reference best industry frameworks that will advise you. So, for example, CIS has got is a great framework. If you use that as a model to work to, it has implementation groups. So, for an entry level of maturity, you can go for what's called implementation group 1. And then as you go up, you get 2 and you get 3 for the higher level. And then on the other extreme, you could have a bank whose business is based purely on RT. If RT goes down, the bank doesn't function, just as an example. So huge reliance on RT. So they would really require a high level of risk. And it's also about the type of data that they keep. So how much sensitive data would that organization have? And then what's the impact if those systems are down? How much personally identifiable data? So in South Africa, we've got what's called the POPIA Act. And so if a customer is storing huge amounts of personally identifiable information, and if this gets breached, our information regulator will come and investigate. And the way the POPIA Act works is that if the threat actor had the ability to view that data, you need to report it. But what the information regulator wants to do is protect the data subjects, the people that that data relates to. So if that data is leaked, that's seen as a very serious occurrence here in this country, similar to like GDPR in the EU. And basically they can levy fines of up to 10 million rand to the business, and there could even be jail time or imprisonment. So coming back to, you've got lots of sensitive information. Just as an example, the customer needs to try and work towards a high level of maturity. Just giving you some examples.
Okay, that's really handful. If you look at insider threats now, so we're now looking at insider threats. So in terms of the level of severity, do you find that insider threats are more compared to the external attacks?
So I like to look at reports, and these threat reports come out. I follow the World Economic Forum quite closely. One of the last reports they release is the Global Cybersecurity Outlook report, and they talk about the risks that concern organizations the most. And interestingly, malicious insiders is number 4. So insider threats are a big concern, and you could almost categorize it into 2 areas. So one type of insider threat, let's just call it the untrained or ignorant user. So that user could be the person that you haven't trained, and this is the weakest link in our cybersecurity defense. That untrained user could go and click on an email, open up an attachment, or click on a link on a website, capture their details, and those details then can be used because it's not the real website, or you could download a malware and install a ransomware. So you've got that category of users. They don't mean bad, they're just ignorant. The other category of users are the malicious ones. So the malicious ones are either somebody with an axe to grind, or, and this is happening a lot, they have been recruited by outside people in these organized groups that do this. And this is happening a lot, where they can try and recruit someone inside a telecoms company or inside a bank, inside a call center, so they can get access to information from that person on the inside. And then those people, they can collude with their friends on the outside, either to open up, loans, or open up cell phone contracts, for example. And then you can just open up to your imagination how much different fraudulent activities you can get away with. So insider threats is a big problem.
Yeah, definitely. So as you're drawing close towards the end, looking back, what are those skills that you wish you would have learned when starting up in cybersecurity?
So most people, when they talk about cybersecurity or IT, obviously you need technical skills. So technical skills are important. And then as you move into cybersecurity, you start to look at governance, risk, and compliance and understanding those skills. And then you start to also say, okay, maybe you need some management skills. But I would say the most important skill is the one that we don't always think about is our people skill. Is how effectively can we manage the customer? Can we manage our team? Can we manage the messaging? So also think about, like, in my journey, I think it was very important to understand where I was in terms of my level of people skills and working on my emotional intelligence and being sensitive to the customers, being empathetic, thinking about what are their emotions, how best can I relate to them, and how can I effectively communicate to them in language they can understand, which we've discussed. The other thing I've also experienced is that if you're helping a customer that has been breached, and you don't always think about it like this, because I'm calm, I'll go in there. Let's just say the customer now has been ransomware. Their business has come to a halt. The managers are shouting at them. Business has stopped. They're in panic. They're worried about their job. They're not in a good place. So emotionally, that customer is a mess. So I think it's a special skill to try and take some time out and not just look at it as like, oh, hang on, I'm just giving him a service. It's almost like a doctor treating someone with a bad injury. You've got to give them a good bedside manner in terms of how you're going to help them get through that emotional stress and reassure them and take them to a better place emotionally.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of EQ which is required most of the time for such situations that people don't take seriously. They focus more on the technical and they forget that at the end of the day, you're going to work with people. So you have to understand how to work with people. What advice do you give someone starting up in cybersecurity, especially in terms of cybersecurity risk? How does someone move from a junior to actually leadership positions, because it's usually hard. Apart from obviously the main one, which is definitely the soft skills, what are those other things that you find are very key ingredients?
So, and I listened to a colleague, he did quite a lot of talking around this, and his advice was to specialize in an area and find something to be really good at. So if you think about that, if you started out as a SOC analyst or you started out somewhere, obviously you need to become proficient at what you're doing. So you'll need certifications. Those certifications are good. I also noticed that a lot of people just go for vendor certifications, and that's great. But I'm going to also suggest you look at vendor neutral certifications, things like EC Council, CompTIA, ISACA, ISC squared, the list goes on. And then very importantly, put in the time, get the right experience, and immerse yourself in all sorts of types of scenarios. Also very important to find mentors and people that you can learn from and look up to. And if you really want to be good at something and succeed, the best way of doing that is to hang out with the people that are doing that and to get people that are positive influence and that you can learn from. Another important thing is if you think about these two areas. So there's management that you might want to move into and then ultimately become a leader. So there's lots of training around that. But management is about planning, organizing, and controlling. And often what we'll take a technical person and promote them to be a manager, but you haven't given him the right training, and often they battle because they have no clue how to go and do those basic management functions. And also as they grow, they might now have a team that they need to lead. Now, leadership is very different to managing. It's coming back to your EQ point. How do you manage people? How do you get the best out of people? But ultimately, leadership is about influencing. And the best way to influence people is to lead by example and to find the right leadership style that works in a particular situation or organization.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Um, hmm, any parting shots? Thank you for all the conversation you've had, especially when it comes to I like the way you break down things and, make them less technical, and also you have a way of, communicating all those information. Not so much, it doesn't feel overwhelming, and also it comes from also an informed perspective. You have done your research, definitely. That's, I guess, why you're good at your job. So, any parting shots for someone?
Parting
If they
Yeah.
have to find you, was there a specific place they can find you? Is there any information you can be sharing with everyone, in the community?
So parting shots. So firstly, it's been great to meet you. It's the first time we've met. I was surprised out the blue. You said, would I like to come on your podcast? I've presented many times, but I've never been on the podcast. So that's my first time. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity. And it is aligned with my goal, my personal goal of educating around cybersecurity. So thank you firstly for the opportunity. Um, in terms of keeping in touch with me, the best way would probably be LinkedIn. I'm pretty active. They can find me on LinkedIn. And if people want to reach out, they're welcome to send me a message. I think I do have contact details on there, but very happy to engage, give advice, because my goal is to encourage people to get into cybersecurity, but also to be professional. So to me, cybersecurity is a profession. It's also a great responsibility. If you think about it, when we are helping our customers, we have their businesses in our hands, and we need to give them the right advice and help them to the best of our ability. And that's quite a responsibility.
Yeah, definitely. I remember as I was going through your profile before this episode, I had a key statement when you were talking about you being in a community of cybersecurity. I mean, IT professionals. I think it is ITTC. Eh?
Uh,
From what
I was at
I can.
TPSA.
RTPC. Yeah, it's quite a mouthful. So yeah, and you talked of the aspect of being in the idea of being a person who is of good integrity, a person who is supposed to be counted on, and also a person who is able to bring other people up through sharing their knowledge. And talking to you right now, I think you embody all that, and I am grateful to having had you on the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome.
All right.
Yeah, for our audience, you can join us in subscribing to the show. We're on the road to 1,000. Find Bryan on all social medias, especially LinkedIn. I don't know if he's on other social medias, but
Leave it to LinkedIn for now.
LinkedIn for now. Yeah, other than that, see you on in the next episode.
Thank you so much. All the best.